Well, this is the first in my Ask the Expert series, and today I've got my good friend Kenny Martin, who is the MD of Block Architects. So, Kenny, could you maybe give us a brief intro into your company, how long you've been in business, and why you love being in the architectural arena?
I laugh at that question, Mike, because
I'm sure you did
before it's the arena. I probably can't get it now because I'm too entrenched in it. So for those of you who don't know, my name's Kenneth Martin. I'm the MD and founder of Block Architects, which is a relatively small business architectural practice based out in Billshill in the depths of Lanarkshire. We've been going since 2004. I set the business up primarily just to enjoy doing architecture, working for myself, and I work from the house. And very quickly we get very busy, and that was a good thing. We ended up taking on some staff. We now operate a small business with 7 staff, and we kind of concentrate on the kind of smaller architectural projects up to a couple of £1 million, the majority of which is kind of residential and self-build as well. So we're pretty well versed in the difficulties and the benefits, but there's a lot of difficulties come from doing self-builds, and we've got a track record on how to manage them.
Yeah, that's good. And do you find that generally dealing with self-builders that they tend to be a bit more forward thinking in terms of design and looking for something a bit different to what the kind of mainstream builders would be building, which, with all due respect to them, quite often are quite standard, in their designs, because they could be building the same houses in Devon as they are in Inverness-shire sort of thing.
To be honest with you, I think some are and some aren't. I think some over the years we've had quite a few clients who have not had any kind of great design aspirations, but the land or the plots that they've purchased could probably, they deserve something a bit more ordinary than your kind of mainstream building designs. I think a lot of self-builders that I came across in the past don't necessarily have the vision about what the outside of the building could be and how it could respond to its landscape and its plot, but they've got great ideas about how they want the inside to be. They know how they want their kitchen, they know how they want their bathrooms, living rooms, etc., and they want the flow of spaces. But how you then put a suit round about that and make it attractive to the eye is something that they probably, it's maybe controversial, but a lot of them probably don't have that vision for, and maybe don't want to spend the money on it. They'd rather spend the money on the bit they're physically living in.
Yeah, I kind of get that, but I suppose that's really where your expertise, comes into being, whereby you can actually suggest things to them, and it would, hopefully that if they saw it was a wee bit different, gives it that uniqueness, which can obviously help in terms of value as well, because if it has that truly architect design kind of look about it, then I think undoubtedly that does help in terms of values as well. Yeah,
I mean, ultimately we try in the practice to introduce something that's a bit unique, to give the house a feature or a few features,
Yeah.
But that all very much depends on budget, the client, the site, and how deserving the whole project is of something that pushes the boundaries.
Yes.
And it's the same potentially with the fabric of the building, whether it's timber kit or whether it's some other form of sit panel or whatever, it's just about, taking the client's brief and working that through.
Yeah. No, you raise a very, very valid point. I think that an early stage in the project, establishing what the budget is absolutely key, because there's no point in designing something that is out with their pockets. So I'm sure in your initial kind of interview brief from them, that's one of the first questions you'd probably have as well. How much have you got to spend on this particular project? Because the design has obviously got to reflect that.
Yeah, we do have those conversations, but equally, and we'll probably come to it at some point in the future, although we do these types of projects day in, day out, they're all different. I reflect on a conversation that I had with somebody recently in the posts. Like you, I'm on a lot of social media sites, and you'll see the person, I'm going to build a 150 square metre house. Here's my plot. How much is it going to cost me? I mean, it's just a ridiculous question, It's an absolutely ridiculous question. And it's almost ridiculous when someone comes in to meet the architect at the first visit and they say, right, I've got £250,000. There's my site. Can you build me something for £250,000? well, we'll give you something for £250,000, but whether it's what you want or not,
Yeah.
it's a different conversation, you know. So the control of the cost of a project from the initial design meeting to handling the thing over on site, there's so many variables, there's so many people, and it's something that needs to be controlled, and that's not just your architect who's responsible for controlling that.
Yeah.
You know? So yes, we have a kind of rough idea on, you know, what we think a build should cost, but it's variable with so many different factors.
No, I get that, and you know, being there many times myself, and say, you know, okay, and it's almost I tend to use cars as analogies and say, well, look, at this moment in time, I don't know if you're looking for a Mini or a Rolls Royce. I don't know what the specification is. I don't know where the site is. I don't know what implications that, you know, there may be on the site in terms of the foundations, and that can, you know, blow your budget day one. So there's loads of things to actually consider. So no, I get that 100%.
Yeah.
So Kenny, you know, briefly tell us what's your role in the, you know, in the process, and how do you help the self-builder then when they approach you?
I would say the best way to start the process if we're getting involved is literally at the start. So we'd like to be involved with the self-builder before they actually purchase the site. That's our ideal scenario.
Yeah.
If we're kind of offering that service, we would probably take a fee to go to site for a half day or whatever it is, you know, depending on where it is, to look at the site, to review the site. Years of experience would allow us to look at the site and, you know, on the face of it, pick out any challenges that lie ahead of us. You know, it could be next to it could be a little dry ditch, which actually is a full flowing stream in the middle of winter that becomes a flood risk issue. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
So these are the types of things that if you get your architect involved early on enough, that we can go out and we can look at the site and we can do literally a desktop analysis. You know, it's not sophisticated; it's just experience, whereby we will go and we'll go back to the client and say, look, yes, it's a good site. Here's the pros for the site, but here's the disadvantages, here's the negatives, here's the things that you really should be researching and doing your due diligence on before you conclude on the site. That doesn't stop them necessarily from making an offer. You know, their offer subject to a few clarifications, which then gives them time and us to work through those challenges for them. So I would say that's probably the best time for us to get involved. If it's past that, then again, we do our due diligence, but the challenge is that the client already has the site. You know, so we'd still do the same due diligence from the get-go. It's just that the client owns the site. So, you know, they've really got to try and resolve any issues then.
Committed at that point, yes.
So really that's when we would get involved. Most of the self-builds we do is either they bought the site or they're about to buy the site, and that's when we get involved.
Yeah. No, and you know, and the part of self-build success course, I always recommend people, you know, actually get someone with experience to look at the site before they actually purchase it, because in some occasions maybe the price that they would offer would be less, being aware of what the challenges actually are, and you know, to help offset the additional cost that these challenges may cost. So I think that's great advice. Mm-hmm. In terms of, you know, your practice as a whole, is, you know, most of your work is within the, you know, kind of residential sphere, is it, rather than industrial, commercial?
Historically, I would say it probably was, but we've seen a shift since the whole COVID scenario, whereby we've moved the business away from kind of small domestic type projects, you know, extensions and the attic conversions. So we've moved away from that, even though that was bountiful during COVID, because everyone's sitting in their house thinking, this is too late for me, I need to extend, you know, but we deliberately moved away at that point from that marketplace. So we do a lot of residential, a lot of self-build, a lot of small development type projects, you know, 3-4 units for, if you like, novice to kind of semi-experienced developers.
Yeah.
We are branching more and more into commercial projects, though. You know, we've always done them, but they're becoming a bit more prevalent in our portfolio, working for local authorities and working for other kind of local commercial developers. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. I think it's for a practice, you know, you don't want to have all your eggs in the one basket. I suppose is really, you know, there's some.
That's it. Yeah. I think we're coming at that time of year, but on the self build, we probably do you know, we're probably doing now maybe 4 or 5. We've got 4 or 5 self-builds on the go in any one year. Some at the early stages, you know, we could be taking one through planning. We've got some on site. We're signing the ones off site. And then by the time we've went through planning and building control, we're hitting site again with the ones that finish. So we've always got about 4 or 5 on the go.
Good. So, in terms of, obviously, you're a fully qualified chartered architect, and what would you see the advantages of using a fully chartered architect rather than maybe a architectural technician for applying for planning permission and building a warrant?
Well, there are many great technicians out there, technologists and technicians, and we employ them in the business to deal with some of the workload that's involved in doing a self-build. But the architect, I would say, is primarily trained in architecture and design.
Yeah.
And that's something that I see as being quite an important step for the client doing a self-build. So we can bring a bit of vision to the project, because that's the way we're trained, you know, the material of the building, orientation, sunlight, daylight, scope, you know, the size of the building on the site, scale and matter. These are things that we get an eye for, that most, not all, but that most technicians are not necessarily trained in and don't really have that eye for the detail. So I would say that using an architect in your self-build can certainly bring the advantage of, you know, design. And then we're also trained in contracts and other legal matters, construction law. You know, we're not specialists, but we've got a handle on some of that stuff, over and above what a technician or a technologist might have. So it's not to ridicule any of them, because yes, most people would say, well, they're cheaper than the architect, but the reason why architects are expensive is because we bring other factors to the table. Yeah,
and I think the other thing is that I think it's to point out that architect is a protected name, in effect, that you can't call yourself an architect unless you actually are a chartered architect, and
that's right.
There's a lot of people are not aware that that is, so that really you should only be dealing with architectural practices that have a chartered architect, because technicians can't call themselves architects.
No, they can't. But I mean, I'm not gonna be one of these architects who, beats them down, because there's some very good ones out there. There definitely is, and as I say, we employ technicians, to do the groundwork, to do the drawing work. Not necessarily design work, but once the building's designed, right, take that through planning, take that through the building control process, get the technical drawings done. And some of our technicians will go out on site, to inspect the builds, sometimes along with me. If I'm doing an inspection on a self-build and doing the certificate through the practice, I will go out and see it, but not necessarily every time, because I can send a technician out and say, go out and take a picture of that detail for me so I can make sure it's done right, and I'm starting to leverage my time. So technicians are okay, but I think the architect brings a different level of experience. And I think also, having just, I do a wee bit of mentoring myself, and having just visited one of my mentees on their site, and we never did the architectural drawings for them, so that really they're just asking me as their mentor to keep an eye on things and ask me questions. And the build was apparently okay, but when you go out and look at it with the experienced eye, and you think, oh, that's not right, that needs to drop, that needs to go left a bit, that needs to get filled in, and it wasn't quite there. But but the client thought this was a great build, and it wasn't that it was a bad build, but it wasn't finished. They were too ahead of themselves and doing the next stage, needed to drop back and fix things. So having an experienced architect or an experienced technician, or someone like yourself who's got experience in building, going out there and actually looking after the build, not necessarily relying on the tradesmen, because tradesmen are great. I've seen it so many times. Well, my boss told me to do that, so I've done that. And he said, but that's not right. That's what my boss told me to do.
Yeah, that's right.
I had that conversation on site last week with the guy. Says, well, guess what? Go and phone your boss and tell your boss that you're getting instructed to take that down to the right level. And before I left site, the JCB was out. They were lifting the insulation in the slab. They were excavating all the backfill and they were dropping the pipe. It was a Scottish water pipe. The pipe was coming in too high, needed to be at least 750 before the finished floor level, or Scottish water won't give you permission to connect. Yeah. So in other words, it was going to freeze. It was too high, too close to the ground. And when I left, the JCB was digging the thing back up. I just thought, you've just wasted, 3-4 days worth of work because you didn't do what you know to do. You did what your boss told you to do. You know what I mean?
That's aye. No, I think the other thing, the term I quite often use is, what's your qualification? And it's a QBE. People say QBE. What the hell is a QBE? That's qualified by experience. Yeah. Well, the more you know when you go on site what to look out for, because quite often it's the same kind of common mistakes that they actually make. And the first time that builders say, "Oh, but I've been doing that for the last 30 years." What's wrong with it? Well, yeah, you may be doing that for the last 30 years, but it's wrong. That doesn't comply with current day building regulations, so you're going to have to change it.
That's it. Well, I guess that's one of the other advantages of having an architect on board. Is we're really at the front, the coal face of regulations, and there'll be stuff that we don't know. Everybody looks at the architect and go, well, you're an architect, so you must know everything about building. Well, no, actually no, because electricians do their own courses, plumbers do their own plumbing courses. So we've got a general overview, but we also rely on other people on a project to be professional, to have the qualifications and to do what they're supposed to do, to tick all the boxes at the end. But it's just through time and experience we pick up on things, But regulations change constantly, and builders typically don't go and get a refresher course on what's happening in the building control regulations. They only get it when they make the mistake on site and somebody pulls them up for it,
No, that's very opportune, because my next thing I was going to ask you about was, when carrying out a project, you obviously need to engage with other professionals, to provide you with information that you need in order to, to progress matters. I'm thinking in terms of topographical surveyor, structural engineer, maybe a planning consultant in some situations if it's a pretty sensitive site. So
yeah,
what people engage with at an early stage in order to help move things along?
Well, all of those people are relevant. All those reports are relevant. When we put out our fee proposals, we put out a list of, a document that says here are the reports and the professionals that we think you will require at this stage, or at this stage, but throughout the duration of the project. Initially, you would be looking at some form of, and I'm trying to remember the list off the top of my head because it's quite extensive, and it actually puts a lot of people off. But you've got site investigation reports, because you might need something specific for the site. There might be an issue. We would be looking at doing trenches for investigations for your foundation types. That's it.
Contamination as well.
Sorry, Mike?
Contamination, if it's a contaminated.
Contamination, yeah. So we'd pick up in the site investigation report the contamination issues. We'd be looking at potential flood risks or not, and also some kind of level of flood risk assessment. A lot of people think the flood risk assessment now just picks up on, well, I'm not next to a river or a burn, so I'm fine. But no, you've also got to look at surface water as well, because you see in today's climate loads and loads that after heavy rainfalls, you'll find that there's roads flooding or water running along surfaces because it's not getting away. You need to make sure your site isn't in the middle of a big puddle. What else is there? The one that a lot of people forget about is knotweed.
Yeah.
It's a relatively inexpensive report to just get a knotweed report and just tick the box and make sure there isn't any on site. Or knotweed or other intrusive plants. Depending on the site, you might be into flora and fauna, bats and badgers, tree reports. Trying to think what else. Oh, the list goes on and on. The list absolutely goes on and on. And each one of those reports requires a specific professional to undertake the report. So you're into structural engineers, civil engineers, your drainage is the big one, then your civil engineers. I'll come on to that later because that's probably the most important thing that I can think of just now. Doing your due diligence and that right at the start. Quantity surveyors, not a lot of my clients will pull in a quantity surveyor for a self-build. If it's something you can afford, I would say definitely bring that person in, because the cost control is important, but a lot of clients think that the architect's on top of the costs, which isn't always the case. What else is there? SAP reports. So how is your house going to perform environmentally? So that you need to do a SAP report. I think that's changing in Scotland soon as well, whereby there's a move towards passive housing, and the Scottish Government's going to release some standards as to how we're going to all comply with new passive housing standards. So we're watching to see what happens with that one. The Scottish Water's the big one. Drainage is the big one. So we do a lot of drawings just now for clients, and they just want to see what the house is going to look like, and you design the house, and they love it. But Scottish Water and getting connections to drains is really difficult just now. So to paint the picture, there's a lot of plots or housing estates, leftover plots in the housing estates or streets, etc. And in the main road, there's a combined sewer, so your fill water and your surface water run in the same pipe. Scottish Water will not let you connect your rainwater from your new plot into that. So the way you get around about that then, of course, is you deal with it on site. But to deal with it on site dramatically reduces the footprint of your house, because the soakaways or the drainage solutions need to be 5 metres from boundary, 5 metres from a house. Now, if you think some of our plots are only 10 to 12 metres wide, so when you bring in this 5 metre rule, where are you putting the drainage solutions under the ground for your site? Because they just don't fit. So we've got situations like that just now with a client who bought a site, and the sticking point is how do we deal with Scottish Water? How do we get, to the extent that we're now having to look not to deal with Scottish Water, to try and take the surface water under the road in front of them and off into the farmer's field with the farmer's permission, etc. And try and drain it that way. So it's there's lots of professionals, there's lots of processes, there's lots of steps in the process, and it's not just as simple as my architect's done my drawings, so all of a sudden we're going to start building in 6 months' time. I wish it was that easy. It used to be as easy as that, but not anymore.
No, I think you've adequately highlighted how it's not a straightforward process. There is a lot of moving parts, and you need to make sure that you tick off all these boxes. And certainly, of recent times, how you drain a site, particularly the rainwater, is absolutely key, and the whole impact in terms of, you say, bats and badgers and all the rest of it. There's many sites that I've actually been involved with where that becomes a major issue, and they can't actually build within a particular breeding season, for example, or when it's a roosting season. So all of a sudden your timescales in terms of your program can be thrown out dramatically, and what you were hoping to build this year, you won't build this year. You have to leave it to next year.
That's right. And program is another word there, Mike. Something we're not talking about, but a lot of self-builders don't have a program. They've got a date in their head. I'm going to start on site on, 1st of December, because I need to be in by April the 31st, because I've got married on the 1st of May. Yes. This is the program. It's set by personal goals, as opposed to a proper understanding of the process.
I think that's it, yeah. And then obviously how they're going about the build is key as well. Are they getting a main contractor to go in and do it from start to finish? Are they engaging a project manager, or are they going to project manage the project themselves? Mm-hmm. Again, unless they're experienced, I would always advise that they really need to have someone behind them that they can actually go to in the event if they've got any particular challenges, because most laymen would think they maybe have a good knowledge, but the reality is, unless you're involved on a day-to-day basis, there's always going to be something going to come up and bite in the derriere, and
In days gone by, I used to commend people for actually having a go at the self-building project management themselves, but I'm now older and maybe a bit wiser, and I've seen so much now, and I think no, you need an architect, who's on board, or somebody like yourself, Mike. And I would probably say somebody like yourself, Mike, who's got experience, and probably has, your service is probably more tailored towards mentoring someone through a self-build.
Yeah.
Our practice is we would do a certificate, but we're not really here to mentor somebody and hold their hand and be in the phone calls at 9 o'clock at night thing. That's no. Now I do that for some of my bigger developer clients,
Yeah.
but on the kind of a one-off self-build, we would probably just say, right, we'll deal with planning, we'll deal with building control, and we'll come out and inspect it, and we'll give you here's your inspections. That's okay, or get your contractor to fix that, So yes, on self-builds, I would definitely say get a mic, get a project manager who's experienced and who can go to site 2-3 times a week and hold your hand and mentor you through it, because if you don't, I would say any cost that you would be obliterated by two or even one mistake. You could just
Well, that's exactly what I say. It's exactly what I say. My fee, if I can't justify my fee many times over, then I would feel as if I'd done you a disservice. And as you know, there are so many pitfalls for the unaware self-builder to fall into, that one little mistake can wipe out my fee, easily.
Yeah.
Take the stress out of the whole thing, because then people obviously then get stressed, and relationships between couples can be involved and all the rest of it. So it's just not worth it. So
well, they say that moving house is one of the most stressful things you can do. No, I want to try building one.
Exactly.
That's it.
Many people do it once and they never do it again. But actually, the reality is, and again, having done it myself a few times, you think, oh, well, I'm never going to do that again. But see, once you're in and settled for a while, and you've got the benefit of the house you're actually living in, what a fantastic buzz you get. The sense of achievement you get is very difficult to put into words.
It's like going to the dentist. Once you're back out of it, you forget the pain. It's just is. It's just it's always great, to actually. I mean, we're a busy practice. This is probably, I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but so many of the self-builds that we do, we try and offer a really good service to our clients. So by the time we're finishing a self-build, we don't go out and photograph. It's terrible, because we've got photographs and then bits. Can you send us up some pictures of the finish, and there's traffic cones and stuff in front of the pictures because they've not quite cleared something. But, we don't go and necessarily visit the house for the coffee and the scone kind of thing, just to say, right, it's now yours and ta-ta, because we're always trying to offer that kind of the professional service. So while someone's house is finishing and it's getting towards the photographic stage, we're actually out on site helping the next client, trying to fix the problem, trying to make sure something's happening. That's where our skills lie. So yeah, we've got some great relationships with our client success, of course we have, but it's not all about this. For us, it's not about the celebration at the end. For the client, it's the client's house. They should be going and enjoying it and having their pals around and all that kind of stuff.
I'm sure you wouldn't be adverse to sharing a bottle of wine with them at some point, though, Kenny.
Well, you see, none of them's ever invited me, but that would sway me. That would sway me.
Good. No, that's been great, Kenny. I think. Is there any other kind of advice you would give builders? I think we've self builders. I think we've probably covered most things. See, if people are wanting to kind of have a chat with you, Kenny, would you be happy enough to having a kind of initial chat with them, maybe a 30-minute chat with them, and just to explore what their project, what they want to do, and then just see if your services would be of interest to them? Would that be something that you would be happy enough to do?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. That's how we deal with most of the clients, is maybe a kind of 15 or half an hour chat. What we typically do is ask them to maybe send us in some information by email. Send us what you've got. So they can send us in maybe some site plans or a planning reference for something that's had planning permission in the past, etc. I'll spend 10, 15 minutes going over that, and then we'll arrange a Zoom call, something like that. However, as I say, if it's a matter of, right, Kenneth, we want you to come out for, I don't know, half a day, travel to a site, look at a site, give us your thoughts on it, blah, 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 have a coffee, chat it through, half a day. So we would charge for that kind of thing, we would charge to do that. But ultimately, yeah, we've got to win business for the office, to keep the team going. So happy to do something like that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, what I'll do is we'll actually put a link to your your details and contact details and links to your various social media outlets and that as well, so people can do a bit of research and then contact you if they want to kind of speak to you further, Kenny.
Excellent, fantastic. Appreciate that, Mike.
Well, that's been great. Thanks for that. I mean, if people, anybody watching this, if you have any other questions, then please, don't hesitate to, to contact us, and I'm sure we'll manage to help you as best we possibly can. So, in closing, Kerry, thanks very much for that. That's been great, and we'll speak to you again soon, I'm sure.